Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another fantastic episode of the Left Wing Live. I'm TJ Whitehead, Powers Taken Not Given. Joined as always, my co-host John Cooper at Counterpoint Politics, and our special guest today, Rio. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem. We got a lot to go over. Here. So we're going to start with the vice presidential debate that I'm sure you all watched last night, live streaming on the Left Wing. We'll go to our guests first. Rio, what was your impression, your overall impression of the debate in general?
I love Tim Walz. It's funny because I think he's literally the most popular one in the race of the four.
By far.
And then Vance is at the very bottom, and then Trump, and then Kamala, then Walz. I like him. I think he's genuine. I think he's authentic. But last night, here's the thing. I think that Walz has a personality where he does best if he's riffing and if he's just in a flow state and if he's just talking from the hip. I think he was overcoached. This is just my honest opinion. I think he was overcoached. He was like writing things down. He was rigid. He looked like maybe he was on a ton of caffeine. He looked nervous. I mean, there were times where he still wiped the floor with Vance. I mean, Vance is a weird, crazy, annoying guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Vance won, but it didn't make Walz look bad, I would say, but it wasn't great for Walz. That's just what I'll say. That's my
Yeah. Most of the polls I saw, they were split really well. Like some had 60-40 Walz, some had 60-40 Vance. Okay. I saw one, it was CNN or Fox actually. It was 5 out of 6 for Walz. I was like, I didn't think he was that commanding. But it's funny you mentioned him being like nervous and stuff. The very first thing I wrote down in my notes last night is Tim Walz has huge eyes. Like his eyes were like this when he was first starting out. And I had mentioned that I believe that JD Vance came off really polished. Like JD Vance was like really firm. He stuck to his script. He seemed professional. I think the advantage was that Vance has been in the national spotlight for a lot longer than Walz. This is Walz, essentially his introduction to the country on a major venue, and he acted like it. I think that it took him like 30 minutes to kind of get his footing because he ended really well. His beginning was kind of rocky, but his middle and ending I thought were a lot better. How about you, John?
Yeah, I think I completely agree with everything that you guys have said so far. Talking about the favorability. So there's, when you're talking about a vice presidential debate, first thing you have to understand is that it doesn't matter.
Nobody cares.
There has never been any empirical evidence that a vice presidential debate has actually affected the results of an election. That being said, we are living in weird times.
Yeah.
And this is by no stretch of the imagination a normal presidential election. And something interesting about this particular one is that we're going with a candidate that has now a plus 37 net favorability rating. He went from a plus 14 before the debate to a plus 37 after the debate in post-debate polling. That is insane. Yeah. I've never heard of a politician, like Jesus Christ himself, would not have a plus 37 net favorability rating.
Are you talking about right now? Is that now?
Do you have the chart? Do you have the
so
the
that
graphic,
was in,
John?
I don't have the chart. I just have a report on it. If you have the graphic, you can pop it up. But it's the CNN SSRS poll. And the Minnesota governor saw a 23-point boost in his favorability ratings, going up from plus 14 to plus 37. Meanwhile, Vance saw a 19-point boost in his favorability ratings, going from a minus 22 to a minus 3. So, like, even with a plus 19 bump, Vance is still unlikable. But yeah, I think that both candidates accomplished their goals. Like, Vance didn't seem like the robot, like terrible person that a lot of people thought. So that's a big win for him. And Walz just cemented his, as you guys said, his not his likability, his relatability, his genuineness.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah, there it is, TJ. Like both of them won. Like I do think both of the candidates won the debate in the political sense. From a rhetorical sense, that's a whole different story. Rio, what did you think rhetorically, like actually talking about the debate and not the results the debate has on the people? What did you think of each individual's performance?
Here's the thing. I'm gonna be really harsh with JD Vance, and so I apologize if there's like JD Vance supporters or whatever. The guy is this slimy, snaky, manipulative dude. He's kind of like Matt Walsh or Ben Shapiro. He has that Christian apologist swagger. You know what I mean? He's someone that would intellectualize. He would try and convince you that Adam and Eve were literal people and that dinosaurs died 6,000 years ago, and he would try and tell you that something is like super intellectual. He has this facade of intellectualness when he's really just a manipulator. So I'm sorry if that's really harsh, but that's JD Vance. And so, like, an example of the manipulation was when he said Haitians were illegal, and then the moderator rightfully just corrected him, said, actually, no, they've gone through the full legal process. And when he was caught, he's like, well, wait, we agreed that you wouldn't moderate, you wouldn't fact check me. And so now let me talk about this app where where people can go through a legal process and become citizens. But the fact remains, the Haitians are legal citizens because they did go through the app. And so, like, he was just manipulative. And my dad, oh, I'm out of breath. Sorry. I drank caffeine. I'm kind of mad at my dad. Me and my dad fight politically like every week. And so my dad sends me a clip of JD Vance saying, "Hey, we agreed that you wouldn't fact check me," but Republicans think that makes him look good because they don't understand that he was just caught in a lie, and then he just started rambling about an app. So it just didn't make sense. Okay, so that's like an example of how I think he's slimy. Now, Tim Walz, sorry. He's a whole different dynamic. He was awkward. He was scared. He was nervous. He was a little bit jumbled. Sometimes he had his feet below him. Sometimes he didn't. He wobbled a lot sometimes. But I don't think people care. I think it's endearing. And he's just authentic. So fundamentally, Walz is still authentic, and Vance is a snake in the grass, and he's manipulative. That's how I thought the debate went, like that tone. And it was so. I'll talk about how bad they use immigration, or I mean, illegal aliens. But we'll get to that later, I guess.
Yeah. The the thing with JD Vance, we said something similar, is that JD Vance is a straight up sociopath. The guy, and sociopaths are very good at faking emotions. Like, they know the right things to say. Like,
That's right.
When Tim Walz was talking about how his son had witnessed the shooting, and JD Vance is like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that. I'm sorry to hear that." I was like, "Come on, JD Vance. Like, we know what kind of person you are." But to the uninitiated, to someone who's not familiar with JD Vance, I can see how that would work. I can see that if the only thing you ever saw from JD Vance were the clips of him talking about, we need a national abortion ban, or a national limitation on abortion, stuff like that, talking about the childless cat ladies and the Haitian immigrants, you'd have a pretty negative opinion. But then you just saw him on the stage, like, okay, he seems like a normal ass politician to me. Like, he doesn't seem super strange. So in that sense, I think you guys are both right that both politicians did a good job. Well, JD Vance, I would have to say, did a better job of raising his profile, simply because he had a lot more to make up from. Walz already had a positive association with most Americans, and he did a good job in raising that. He had a few slip ups here and there. Yeah. Him mentioning that he befriended a school shooter, stuff like that, just odd things that people could easily chalk up to nerves. No one put any malicious intent behind that kind of stuff. And so, he did a good job with that. But Vance, I hate to give credit to JD Vance. I hate to give credit, but I think he performed about as well as he possibly could, because not that I feel like sorry for JD Vance, but there's some areas where he just has nowhere to go. Like, Tim Walz did a great job when he pulled out the what do you say? Can you answer this question? Did Donald Trump lose the election? And JD Vance kind of just floundered around everywhere. So, but what else is he gonna say? Like, what else could he possibly say to that?
This was a threat to our democracy.
I think I'll put that clip up, actually, of him mentioning that, because I thought that was his strongest moment of the debate when he said that. So let me get this going here.
Manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious.
It's hilarious on so many levels. I want to do a little play-by-play breakdown of this.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Because first of all, you start with JD Vance making this face. I don't know who he was making that face to. I don't know if he was looking at the moderator like, bro, are you going to help me out here? Like, it was just such like an entitled little shit.
Oh my God. Hold on. You're right, John. I didn't
one
catch
of his
that.
most memeable looks of the night.
Holy shit.
See, in a way that we had not seen.
Right. I never caught that. I didn't catch that. That's
Yeah,
true.
me neither.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. That's great. I never noticed that.
And then he does the right thing. This is what Harris didn't do, that I was like screaming at the screen. Hey, just corner him on this, because he can't defend. We talked about this last night, TJ. It's an indefensible position to deny the results of the election, which has been validated like dozens of times in states across the country by different judges, many of which were appointed by Donald Trump himself. It is there's a lot of things you can lie about in politics. This is one of the most clear, hey, this is like stupid. This is obviously not, even most Republicans don't believe this.
Right.
And so it's indefensible. And so Walz cornered him on it, and it was brilliant. And the great thing that happens there, his look, Walz's look is just like, yeah, no, you guys should be looking like this when you hear this, because it's such a genuine response. And when he's just like, oh yeah, let's talk about the future. It's indefensible that you have a non-answer about the censorship. It's like, that question wasn't posed to him.
For 2020.
Let's talk about he goes, I talk about the future, and then he brings up 2020 immediately.
It's a thing that Vance he didn't do as much of as I thought he would. Trump, his entire debate was steeped in the right-wing bubble rhetoric.
Mm-hmm.
And in the right-wing bubble rhetoric, the censorship reply makes sense. Because that is what they're actually saying. You can just say, oh, but what about censorship? And it makes sense in right-wing internet bubble shorthand, but it's completely indecipherable to the average American who isn't in that. I thought Vance would do more of that, because that is where he came up from. That is his home base, is that Twitter right-wing sphere. He mostly avoided that, but he's sucking it there, because again, there is no actual defense. They've had to invent one that doesn't actually address the problem.
Yeah, it was like what Rio was saying. You're going back to 2020. This is something that they tried a lot. Jesus, in 2022. If it didn't work back then, it's certainly not going to work now. Where you had all these Republicans who were running on mask mandates or the vaccine, or they couldn't, Facebook wouldn't let me post about how you should be eating horse paste to cure your diseases and everything. And people were like, okay, this is 2022. What are we talking about here? 2024, nobody gives a fuck about that. Nobody, except for the most, absolute insane right wingers, who honestly, something I complain about all the time is when they bitch about free speech in the First Amendment, because what they usually mean is they want to spread conspiracy theories and they want to use slurs. That's what they want on private platforms, and they're not allowed to, except on Twitter, where you can do that now. And they got the right billionaire, the one they wanted, to let them say whatever they want. But a winning election strategy, that is not. And I think that might be why JD has dialed it back a little bit. It's good at riling up the base, but when you're presenting yourself to the national public and you're in the toilet by 20-something points, you may want to try to dial it back a bit. So I think that's kind of why he went with that.
He dialed it back, though, with abortion. He is very cognizant of what he's doing. He's like, I don't know, he has that Ben Shapiro vibe sometimes, that super annoying, like, trying to weasel your way out of everything intellectually. So an example is the abortion stuff. He knows that everything that he has said and believes about abortion is super unpopular. And you guys know since 2022, like, they're trying to back off abortion stuff. And so when he got the abortion questions, he immediately pivoted to, I want to help families have more babies.
I gotcha. That's like, let's play the clip for that actually right here. See what he had to say. So,
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, I one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you.
I want to pause it there because when he said that, I was like, where is he going with this? Is J.D. Vance going to announce an illegitimate child during the vice presidential debate? Because that's what it sounded like to me. It's like, yeah, a lot of girls in my neighborhood got knocked up. I know one of them very well. She's near and dear to my heart. I love her. Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, hold on. This is like kind of a weird thing, J.D., but let's see where you're going with this.
And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Now, Rio, I want you to explain to the good folks out there what your problem is with that totally reasonable answer from J.D. Vance. What's your issue here, man?
I want to explain this super clearly to people, and I want to make it like emotional. I used to knock on people's doors and tell them, we believe that we can be with our families forever. And that was like something that I would try to sell my religion to them. But what I was really saying behind that soft, flowery language is, I only believe that my church with this specific priesthood authority will have eternal families. Everyone else is going to be cast out and estranged from their family members. That was the real belief, but I presented it with flowery language. So what's happening right now is the same exact shit. He's like you said, he's backed into a corner with abortion. He's trying to come left on abortion. Him and Trump are scrambling to kind of get away from Project 2025, at least give lip service to getting away from it. And he's, instead of talking about that, he's trying to use flowery language to say, well, I just want to help people have babies and help women and families and these and housing too, which he's against housing, public housing. But anyway, it's a manipulative, slimy way to not say what he actually feels about abortion. That's what I think. Is that too harsh? You guys think that's too harsh?
John,
not too harsh. I think that's just an accurate representation.
I'm scared to speak,
you basically
guys.
just said the sun is hot. Is that too harsh on the sun? Like,
Okay.
No, so it is. I wonder how that clip got perceived by normies, because TJ, you and I were both
they won't
like,
understand. This is manipulation, and normies don't understand these levels of. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but generally,
no, we say it all the time. We say it all the time.
It's totally fine. It's not even like, it's not like an insult. It's when people aren't immersed in this like we are, you miss it. You know, like if you didn't watch football ever and you watched a football play that was pretty simple, you'd be very confused, even if you're an intelligent person. You know, like it's similar to that. And when you see someone, he very eloquently stated that, and it did like just pass the smell test of like, this seems like a coherent statement.
Exactly.
But it wasn't, because as TJ you pointed out a lot, that anecdote didn't connect with what he was saying in the slightest.
He changes
everything
the
that he
subject.
stated, everything he stated wouldn't have helped that friend of his. Like all of those, he could actually address housing and the cost of raising a kid and all of that, and that woman would have still been forced to have a child of someone who was abusing her. It wouldn't have helped any of it. So I really don't see where he was like, I don't. It was clearly well rehearsed, but I don't understand how that anecdote passed the editing. It was very confusing.
It was a performance, and his voice was soft. He used big words. He talked about family values. It was just a performative thing that kind of made people think that he knew what he's talking about. When in reality, all he was doing was changing the subject and avoiding the question.
And I think it works. But if you're going to be lying and performative, why not make a lie that was coherently made? Why not make an anecdote that would have been, the problem would have been solved by the solution you're presenting? It was very odd. And again, I don't think anyone I don't think this would affect normal people, but it was just a weird choice to me.
I'd be curious to know how your average American did take that, because that's all I could think about. Because assuming the story's true, I'll assume it's a real story. You could have just told, I could have told a fake one that's like, well, I had a friend of mine and she had an abortion because she couldn't, access childcare. And then this is why I support this childcare policy of raising terrorists. Whatever. It'd have been stupid, but at least it would have been coherent in the storyline. But him going with the abuser angle is like, well, that doesn't address the fact that she would have had to, give birth to a child who was the son or daughter of an abuser. And what are you going to do about that? Are you going to put a guy in jail? That doesn't help her either. Yeah. So it was just a strange anecdote. And the right wing is proud of it. In fact, that clip that I showed was from the townhall.com Twitter page. Like, they were proud of this and putting it out there. So maybe it did work. I don't know. My confidence in the average voter slips every single day doing this. So maybe it did. And honestly, I do tip my cap to the good old fashioned sophistry, because you can, with most people, you talk long enough and you use fancy enough language, you can get them like, oh, cool, this guy really knows what he's saying. And I know that from personal experience. So yeah, JD Vance did do that, but I think his main problem is that with political figures and, just nationally known names in general, your die is kind of cast pretty early on what kind of person you are. And oddly enough, I remember learning this, listening to Rush Limbaugh. I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh every single day when I was a kid. And he would talk about this. And it's 100% true that when you're first introduced to the public, you have about a month to establish who you are and what the narrative is about you. So when Obama was introduced, for example, he was introduced as this bright, erudite scholar, this guy who's very thoughtful, very intelligent. If he fucked up and said something stupid, they're like, oh, well, he's just a smart guy making a mistake. But, someone, like Sarah Palin, like a month into who she was, oh, who's this fucking bumpkin? It didn't matter what she said after that. She could have said something that was totally intelligent and made perfect sense. You're like, I don't trust because it's Sarah Palin. And that's done just like that. And it's very hard to change that narrative. So with JD Vance, he is the crazy anti-abortion, weird women guy. So he can move it a little bit, but it's always going to kind of stay with him. So I think he just, did damage control on that about as much as he could.
You're absolutely right. He is the crazy cat lady woman hating guy. And I think, and now that you bring that up, I think he probably did the very best.
The best he could, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he saved his political career, I think, last night. Because if he had kept going on the trajectory he was going and Trump lost in the landslide, he would have been political radioactive waste. But he kind of showed, hey, I can present the Republican Party without Trump, and that's a very valuable thing to present to the country right now.
Yeah, so it wasn't just JD Vance who had a few slip-ups last night. I wanted to go over this one with Tim Walz. So Tim Walz had this one time when he was asked about something that not a lot of people talk about. He mentioned that he was in Tiananmen Square during the protest in China, and the answer he gave was it was an interesting one. Let's hear what he had to say here.
Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community.
Right about now, I think is when Nick and John and I was like, what the hell is going on here? How has he spent a minute on this ridiculous question and still going with
who
it?
I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right.
Folks, this goes on for another minute. It goes on for another minute of him just I remember, well, John, what were your thoughts when you saw this? I'll go to you first.
Yeah, so it was just like, what are you doing, bro?
Yeah.
But afterwards, I was like, does it matter? Like this, it's such a weird question to have been asked. I do think he was taken off guard by it, and I don't think he prepped for it. And I think that he reached back into other like anti-oppo prep work that he's done, and that's why he fumbled so much over the answer. I don't think because it's a weird fucking question. It's one of those questions that's like the media treating both sides as equal is inherently biased towards Republicans because who gives a shit? He said he was in China during the Tiananmen Square protests
in the spring. But he was actually there in the summer.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, he wasn't there when the dude was in front of the tank. Like, bro,
yeah.
Like this was a long thing. Like, it was still going on at the time he was there. Right. It just wasn't that specific event. No one gives a shit. And I just looked up search results, like Google Trends for Tiananmen Square, like 182 searches that peaked when he said that. Like that's it. Like this.
Well, that's only because Tiananmen is very hard to spell.
That's also true. I should have looked for all the misspellings. But I don't think that matters. Like, it's something that, Republicans might post on their mantle, but I don't think anyone really and I think anyone who's like pretending to give a shit.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Right.
Anyone who's saying they give a shit is pretending to give a shit.
Right.
There's no way you care. Especially if you're voting for Donald Trump. Like, it's Republican.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, the Republicans are like basically getting really excited about this, that he's a liar, that he's lying. That's the point of this, because apparently they're claiming that and I don't know, I haven't looked into this, but they're claiming that he was there on the day. And that's the claim that he supposedly made, that he was there in the spring, but then he was just there in August, in the summer. Like, and the August isn't even like the end of summer. It's just like, it's just August. So it's a stupid thing. And to me, Tim Walz seems to be like really embarrassed. Like, he seems like it's a gotcha that he kind of feels bad about. So he's like over explaining and like over defending himself. That's kind of how I took it.
Yeah. Did your dad say anything about this? Was it one of the dunks that your dad used? I wonder. I have to check what.
He will.
He will. Well, yeah. So my first thought on this was, what he should have done? He should have been like, no, I was there. Just to say it, like, no, I actually was there. I don't give a shit what the people on public radio are saying in Minnesota. It's fake news. I was there. I challenge anyone to prove I was.
Just say incapable of doing that to you.
Well, it
wouldn't come across right. Like,
yeah, you're right. Probably doesn't have it in him. But honestly, if he said that, what were they going to do? Well, actually, this person says you didn't leave till August. Well, they're wrong. They're wrong. I was there. I know. Were you there? I was. Because stop's cold. Dead. What are they going to say?
Unverifiable.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, and play the same fucking game the Republicans do, where they're just like, oh no, actually, I think they are illegal
Just
immigrants.
pay some Chinese guy to say you were there with
Yeah,
them,
I know, right? Yeah, I'm a friend of Tim Waltz. He was my roommate in March of that year.
Just take a video of a Chinese guy speaking Chinese.
Yeah, I was
subtitle it with whatever English you want.
So whatever you want.
The
I know,
Republicans
right?
will never even notice.
No, that's right. Yeah, there's like, well, that's not actually what it says. Yes, it is. Yeah, just to deny reality like they do. Yeah, do you speak Chinese? You trust? Oh, you trust?
Now you trust the experts?
Exactly. Yeah. Now you trust the translator at Duke University. Get like, come on, you know those guys are bought and paid for.
Oh
so
gosh.
the what I really loved is the wrong word, but was really annoyed by was the ending right here.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this is I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said.
That was very easy. That was very easy. If he'd have done that at first, boom, done. What can anyone say about that? Yeah, I was there during that time, not during the actual protest. That was like 50 days before I got there. A simple mistake on my part. No one could possibly hold that against you. Nobody. Go ahead, John.
It's such a clear and obvious, like, he isn't, like, this isn't what he does. Mm-hmm. Because if you are used to debating, if you're actually like, this is something you do, there was a moment in that long spiel of his where he ended and then chose to keep going because no one else started talking. And whenever you do that, it looks so weak. Yes. It is like a cardinal sin of debating. When you stop talking, you decided to stop talking and you make them say something next. He just fucked that up. And, I don't think it matters at the end of the day, but like from a technique standpoint, he fumbled that bag hardcore.
But he was like trying. He was just trying to do good. He was nervous,
I know.
And it's just not the same vibe at all that Vance gives. I mean, it's I will criticize the Democrats all day long. I am no friend to the Biden administration or really Kamala Harris, to be honest. But I'm not scared to criticize them. But the levels, the discrepancy of dishonesty and manipulation is huge. Like JD Vance is a dishonest, manipulative, slimy person, and then Walz is just kind of awkwardly he's just awkwardly fumbling. So there's no, there's no comparison. That's all.
Yeah, there's no one. This is kind of like why Biden won in 2020, that you had a lot of people who just despised Donald Trump and they hated him. Like they wanted all the worst things in the world for him. He's very divisive, very polarizing. And you had a lot of that with Hillary Clinton as well in 2016. There was nobody who was getting like, oh man, that Biden guy, fuck him. I can't wait to take down Joe Biden. There's almost nobody like that. The Republicans pretend they're like that now. They try to create him as this Don Corleone figure, and that he's this this global entity. Yeah, this global entity.
He's both a Don Corleone and a bumbling old man. It's a weird picture they try to paint of him.
He's Vito and Fredo Corleone at the exact same time somehow. He's totally competent and really dumb. And so it doesn't work. And so the same is kind of with, like, no one really hates Kamala Harris. Nobody does. And even more so for Tim Waltz. Like, you watch Tim Waltz out there.
I want to clarify, TJ. No one who's, like, voting against Kamala Harris for Donald Trump hates Kamala Harris. We hate Kamala. We hate Joe Biden. He's done a lot of things to piss people off on our side of the aisle. On the middle of America, I just can't imagine anyone gets their fucking feathers riled up about, I don't know, Build Back Better.
Yeah. The blinding, incandescent rage that a significant portion of the country feels for Trump is not going to be reflected in Harris, and it's certainly not going to be reflected in Waltz. So Tim Waltz and honestly, JD Vance, shockingly, for his small amount of time in the American spotlight, has managed to offend more people per day than any politician I've ever seen. So, it just wasn't going to work. So when Waltz is caught in a lie, I mean, maybe I'm just looking at the rose-colored glasses here. I can see people thinking, buddy, what are you doing here? But also, and I've been caught in a lie too, and I've kind of flustered and gotten. And so I think that even with stuff like that, he still managed to, come out with a greater. I was actually kind of surprised to see that chart, John. That JD Vance did so well. I didn't think he did that well, but he got like plus 19. But that Waltz got like a plus 13 or plus 14 or something. That was pretty. If you can't, it's hard to say anybody won definitively that debate. But the fact that both their numbers went up is good for both of them. And for policy, real quick on one, I wanted to share this clip of them talking about insurance, everyone's favorite topic. I know it's really, really fun, but let's see what, this was the part that I really enjoyed.
Or did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now. We've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then what happens?
You think the individual mandate's a good idea?
I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying healthcare once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
All right, Rio, I want to go to you first with this, but did we lose him?
No,
Are you still there? Oh, okay, all right. So
I'm good.
What I remember thinking when this happened was this is toward the end of the debate, and when I think Waltz was really hitting his stride, because I've seen a lot of people say this since the debate, was that the main strength of Tim Waltz was his everyman charm and personality and his genuine authenticity when it came to supporting things that he believed in. So, bad luck for him when he had to start off saying, oh my God, can you believe what happens with Iran and Israel? And we need to beef up the. I don't think he really, really is strong on that. That's probably the subject that he wanted the least. So, and it was nervous and on his back foot. But once he got into the stuff that he knew really well, the housing, the medical issues, the abortion stuff, you could tell like he was passionate. And that's when his more conversational demeanor matched really well against the droning and like the iciness of JD Vance. And I thought that was a good example right there when he's saying, listen, insurance does not work if you split people into healthy people and old and unhealthy people, because it'll fall apart instantly. And that's all you're looking for. What did you think when you saw that?
That's exactly right. He kind of came in and out like a TV reception. He came but he was on his game. And when Tim Walz shoots from the hip and he riffs and he goes like authentically conversational, then he just destroys. I mean, he's really, really great on interviews. Tim Walz is great on interviews, but debating is a whole nother animal. And he was just so nervous a lot of the time. But yeah, I kind of wish that he would stay conversational and do this constantly to Vance, to talk down about the really practical applications of the policies. I wish that he would do that to Vance, because I think that's where Vance would completely fall apart. So yeah, he did great.
I think that in that clip, you really clearly saw the benefit of him having been a teacher.
Yeah.
Because he explained that in such a succinct and normal person way, without sounding like he was talking down to the American people, but explaining, no, you need this in order to broaden the insurance base, in order for it to stay around. Like, it was very clear, it was very succinct, and it felt so much like your teacher explaining something to you. And I thought that was something that kind of came throughout the debate, is that teacher experience, that ability to talk above someone without talking down to them, really came through the entire time. And yeah, sometimes he was bumbling and nervous because he isn't as experienced in this, but I think that the experience that he did bring to the table is the reason you saw a net fucking 37 favorability rating. Like again, I cannot overstate how impossible that number is. Like it almost seems like a typo. I could not believe that when I saw that number.
Yeah.
People don't care about his gaffes. People
No.
don't care.
Yeah, because they're genuine. They're genuine gaffes. No one thinks, oh, he's gaffing because he didn't properly say the thing right in the right way because he's actually trying to do a bad thing the way
He's
that like
evil.
Vance or
Yeah.
Trump does. Like, it's just like, yeah, genuinely, bro, he fumbled over his words.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It's just a dude. He does that.
That kind of applied to Biden too. That if you
Mhm.
remember Biden's vice presidency, he was known for saying the wrong word or the wrong statement or swearing offhand and shit. They're like, oh, that's just Joe. That's just how he is. And people didn't really hold it against him because they didn't feel there was any malicious intent involved in what he said. It's like, oh, he made a mistake. He's human. It kind of, in a weird way, it kind of makes you more endearing. But what I want to focus on now is the whole thing with Tim Walz, that when he came out, he brought this persona that had a very charming affectation. And John and I had talked about this, I think right before the debate and several times on the show, where we just hadn't seen a lot of Tim Walz over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I feel like he was introduced. He made that one speech about JD Vance being weird. It caught fire. Everyone loved him. Like we had the coach memes and stuff. And then he kind of vanished. And people talked a lot about how Harris vanished. And I can kind of understand why Harris, like you get a presidential campaign dropped on your lap. You want to make sure all your ducks are in a row. So you're very careful and stuff. Walz did not need to be burdened by that. If you're loved by people just by your personality, you should capitalize on. We were saying that he should go like on Hot Ones and stuff, just make him more accessible to the public. And I ran across this article on CNN talking about this kind of thing, that right after let's see, CNN says 3 weeks into her presidential run was the first time the Biden campaign's pollsters, now her pollsters, held a deep dive call with Harris's inner circle to discuss what she's been saying on the stump. Over the line came a lot of praise, but also some suggested tweaks. First, said veteran Democratic numbers man Jeff Garin, summarizing their analysis, stop saying we're not going back. It wasn't focused enough on the future, he argued. Second, lay off all the weird talk. Too negative. I hadn't heard that they were. Now, we're not going back part, I think we talked about it, John, that you don't want a negative campaign slogan. That one.
I agreed with that.
Yeah,
I agreed with the first sentence, not the second one.
The second one, that does explain why we haven't seen as much of Tim Walz lately, because they're like, that was kind of his thing. I mentioned during the debate that I thought not only should he have been more aggressive with JD Vance, but if you don't want to do that, you don't feel that's your wheelhouse, be passive aggressive. Just throw lines in there that aren't necessarily insults, but very clearly are, if you can read in between the lines.
The couch.
Oh, the couch. The couch jokes or whatever. Yeah, make a clever joke or something about sofas or love seats without actually saying couch, just kind of dancing around it. But I was like, oh, this does explain, because I mean, like you were saying, John, I've never seen someone that had such a meteoric rise, which is a funny word since meteors fall, but a meteoric rise into politics as Tim Walz that was just wasted. That this last month, you just didn't hear from him at all. And it's like, oh, yeah, the Biden people said, let us tell you what to do. We got this taken care of. And they listen. What do you think, Rio?
Bad decision. It's a bad choice. They love bad choices. They don't comprehend good strategy sometimes. I honestly believe this. It seems like maybe billionaires are trying to control the tone here.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I always think of. Maybe that's conspiratorial, maybe that's crazy, but I just I totally agree with you. He should have been going on Joe Rogan and smoking some weed. You heard it here first. Smoke weed on Joe Rogan, dude.
Yeah.
I don't go around and just
not.
be crazy. Go do food. Do food stuff. I do TikTok stuff. Tim Walz is everything. Tim Walz is the whole campaign, because she's so thoroughly, Kamala Harris, I don't mean to take us off into a tangent, but Kamala Harris, she's so thoroughly dedicated and committed to spewing Zionist propaganda, like peace process. She says all of the AIPAC stuff, just like Biden did. And it's so toxic that they kind of just want to hide from it. And so, like you said, they should have been parading Tim Walz around. Yeah.
And that's why, by the way, like when I talked about Vance being in an indefensible position with the election denial, That's why Walz was stumbling out of the gate, because he was immediately put in an indefensible position of defending the Biden administration and Kamala Harris on that issue, because it's an issue, and we're going to talk about it later in the show, that they're drawing a line that doesn't please anybody. No matter what you think about the situation, I don't think anyone's happy with how it's playing out. And I don't think even moderates anymore are happy with how it's playing out. I don't think Republicans are happy with how it's playing out. I know for fucking sure we on the left aren't happy with how it's playing out, and they're just cementing themselves into this indefensible position for no reason. I also want to say, with the plus 37 net favorability rating, I think we might be seeing more Tim Walz. That's one of those numbers where it's just 37, bro.
But John,
there's a scene in Veep, and I know you haven't seen Veep, TJ, but where her mom is dying, and she's having the decision of whether to pull the plug or not, and her campaign manager is like, "Just so you know, you've got a little bump in the polls. It's a death bump." And she's like, "Oh, well, I'm not going to just keep this going and keep my poor mom's life going just for a little bump." And he's like, "It's double digits." And she's like, "Double digits? maybe I have to do this." And that's a number where it's I think we're going to see more Tim Walz. I think the people at Hot One should be calling the Kamala administration right now.
Listen, I would generally agree with you, but he was already at plus 23. That's already numbers that we haven't seen before, and they were still squandering it. So, I mean,
but it was an untested
23.
This is a vetted, tested 30. They're idiots. We know they're idiots. So they can do a dumb thing. But
I think I would predict we're going to see more of what we've seen, because we talked about this before. Harris is in a similar situation. Harris is at a +1. For a presidential candidate, which we haven't seen in a long time, over a decade or so. And she's still, playing it really safe. And with with Walz, I think we mentioned during the pre-show that, if Vance is out there every week, it seems stepping on his own dick and just fucking everything up for himself. All right, just keep letting him do it and everything. So I don't know. I hope so. If they're smart, they definitely would because Walz can do stuff that Harris, not necessarily that she's not incapable of doing, but he's given a lot more latitude, a lot more leeway. He can be the fun guy. He can be the cool substitute teacher. And that's what I think he should be doing. Oh, literally. He was a teacher. Yeah. And so he could play into that and at least distract people from the stuff that they're, a little sour on the current ticket about. I just thought about this, John, when you mentioned the Veep or whatever. Well, I haven't seen the show, but you mentioned how about pulling the plug on an elderly person. I don't know if you guys heard, but yesterday was Jimmy Carter's 100th birthday. About a month ago. So honestly, I can't remember when Jimmy Carter was put into hospice, but I feel like it was March or something. It's been a long time. But I've been waiting for Jimmy Carter to die for a long time now, and he just kept living. And I was like, oh man, is this guy going to make it to 100? And he did. I thought it would be a really sad thing if he, made it to 99 and 363 days or something, but he did make it. And someone posted this video, if you guys saw it, of him being wheeled outside for his 100th birthday. And I wasn't ready for what I saw. This is what Jimmy Carter is today.
Oh man.
People, if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Die young, make a good-looking corpse. That I stand by this to my dying day. Literally, that human beings were not meant to live 100 years. I mean, I thank God for Jimmy Carter and all the great work he's done, especially in his post-presidency. He's up there with one of the better human beings. It's hard to say that any good person has ever been president of the United States, but he's up there.
He's one of the best. Yeah.
He's up in like the John Quincy Adams stratosphere of decent men who are presidents, and especially his post-presidency has done a whole lot with Habitat for Humanity. He's been an outspoken defendant of Palestine. He's done a lot of great things. It's time to let him. I mean, I'm not saying euthanize Jimmy Carter. That's not what I'm saying. But if that were me, I'd be like, folks, let me go. Let me go. I've had a hell of a run. I mean,
give me the best drugs you got. And
exactly.
Send me into the sunset.
You guys ever see Soylent Green? You ever see that movie it's people. If anyone haven't watched it, they feed people Soylent Green and it's people. But at the end, they euthanize you, and they're living in this like concrete jungle. No one's ever seen a plant in their 50 years of life. And if you choose to, euthanasia, they put you in this room and they have this projector screen. It shows all these beautiful animals you've never seen before. They get you on the highest psychedelics possible, and you go out with a bang. Do that for me. If I'm 88 and still holding on like that, let me go. I am straight up not having a good time here. But had you seen that video, John? I saw it yesterday. I was like, man.
No, I hadn't seen that video, but yeah, I had the same thought. I was just like, oh my God. Like
that's weird.
The family needs to make their own decisions. Like I'm not like sitting here telling them what to do.
Exactly.
But I'm like, God, that looks rough.
Yeah. But you know what though? He's always been really lucid. Like that, every time I've heard him speak in his old age, he was like lucid. So, but what I saw right now, like that looks pretty.
That was it too, because I feel like I saw him at 99 and talking and doing fine. Yeah. That was a horror movie right there. Mm-hmm. It reminded me of, you guys remember what George H.W. Bush looked like at the end?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of. He was like 94, 95 or something like that. And I was like, damn, that is just it. Once again, it's not our place, but it's like it barely seems to classify as alive to me. It's like like I'm sure he's breathing and all, but who knows if he's even there or not.
Yeah, but you have to understand, these presidents are getting the best healthcare in the world. They have chefs. They eat fruit and vegetables, and they just live forever. They're being protected. All their assets are taken care of. They have no stress. Yeah.
It would be an act of treason to euthanize Jimmy Carter. They would have to execute you. He's a national icon. Yeah.
Jay, before we move on to the next topic, I wanted to cover one more debate thing.
Sure.
Right. Because Rio brought it up earlier, the immigration thing. And there was a moment in the debate that J.D. Vance, he said that immigration is driving up housing prices. I have a report from the Fed that I'll release after the campaign. Have you guys seen what he said was his evidence?
I didn't read the report, but I saw a synopsis of it. I'm sure you're going to go over it.
Well, so there was three things that he shared. The thing that he was specifically referring to from the Fed, it was not a report, guys. It was a transcript of a speech that one of the Fed board members gave, and it was 2 sentences long.
Oh boy!
In which it's, and he tweeted this out with full just this is what it said. Given the current low inventory of affordable housing, the inflow of new immigrants to some geographic areas could result in upward pressure on rents, as additional housing supply may take time to materialize. That's all. That's it. It's not a report. There's no data. There's no evidence. It's someone who's on the board of the Fed just speculating. Yeah, it might in some areas increase rates. That's it. And even they specify it's because we have too low supply of housing.
That's affordable housing.
The entire reason that it would ever have an effect. And then he shares 2 other reports. One is a report from 2017 when Donald motherfucking Trump was president. And the other was a CBO report, which to his credit did say, quote, the research literature has generally found that increases immigration raise state and local government spending, particularly on education, healthcare, and housing, more than their revenues. What he conveniently left out immediately before that was this, that it increases the federal level. It decreases the deficit by $0.9 trillion. That's what the CBO found. He's saying, oh yeah, there's some budgetary impacts on a local level, but on a national level, it makes us nearly $1 trillion. And you have to read past that part in order to get to the part that he quoted. It is such a everything he says about immigration is such a fucking lie. The fucking Haitians in Ohio, they are making the fucking city better. The city was dying. It was losing population, and they have revitalized the city. The examples he gives are reasons why we need more immigration, time and time again. And yet the Democrats are so inept on this because they're afraid of championing immigration, and they just let him get away with it, even though he just sets up the trap for himself every single time.
Yeah. So
I know you wanted to talk about immigration is like my number one pet peeve topic, but
dude, me
I know
too,
you want to talk about it too.
Me too, but my number one is housing. My number one topic is housing, and whatever somebody says about housing always betrays their real beliefs, whether they believe in human rights, because the right to life is something that we believe in. We believe in freedom of speech, the right to privacy, the right to life. And if you can't have a primary shelter, you will die. You need food, water, primary shelter. You need housing. And it's funny that the trick that they use, they say there's a low inventory of housing. No, there's not. They say there's a low inventory of affordable housing. Then it's true. So then they never say who's really driving all the rents up and the pricing of housing up, which is real estate investor practices. They never say that. It's always the people at the bottom. I mean, it's so simple. It's a story as old as time. It's always the people at the bottom causing all the problems. Anyway.
And not to mention, if you actually go into the evidence and the research, the people who do put upwards pressure on housing, the immigrants that actually do that, aren't the fucking asylum seeking Haitians coming over. It's the high income doctors from India and very, very high earners, which makes a lot of sense. But those are the immigrants that the Republicans are always like, oh no, we like that.
Yeah.
No, you fucking don't. You like the white kind. That's it.
Yeah.
If you want to bring down housing prices, you're gonna have to start deporting doctors. That's it. That's how you would actually, if you were to use this as a way to bring down housing prices, which wouldn't even be that effective to have any effect, you got to deport doctors. And that's idiotic.
Yeah. What I liked most about that is I liked when Tim Walz would just straight up ask him a question himself and not wait for the moderators. I encourage people to do that way more during debates. Yeah, way. And so and when he asked them about the housing, and he said, well, first, where are you going to build these houses? You said you want to free up federal lands. J.D. Vance did not have an answer for that. He kept saying, well, there's plenty of federal lands we're not using. He's like, oh, so we're going to drill and build houses on the same land? What's going on? And he couldn't go anywhere with it. But when he asked, well, what evidence do you have that these migrants are raising the cost of housing? And he said, well, there's a Fed study that now the fact that he had that ready, that flimsy ass 2-line blurb that means he doesn't have a lot to go on here. The fact that he had to reference that and had to find it, so that's among the best evidence he could find, was like, oh, this guy, if you squint and look really hard, it kind of sort of looks like he can prove my point here. And what was I looking at here? There was another question he asked that was really good. I can't remember. You guys remember
you're thinking of what regulations?
Thank you. That's right. Oh, actually, I think I have the clip. Actually, hold on. I think I have the clip. Let me find it here. But this was something that I think I stood up and cheered during the live stream, because this is a question that I think people should ask Republicans as often as they can, because it is a line that Republicans use quite often where they say that we need to, 1, cut taxes, 2, reduce regulations. And this is how you should respond.
For you to clarify, there are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very
Okay, I thought that question was fantastic because this is something that they say all the time. Like, oh, you got these regulations, these overbearing regulations, all this red tape. All right, which regulations are you talking about? Because if, like, Tim Walz goes on later on to say that, if someone builds a house, I want to make sure that house is built in a way that if a fire breaks out, the people can get out of the house quite easily. And there's this, Republicans have done a great job, like making the word liberal a bad word, which is funny because it's a bad word for us now too. But it was a bad word first for the Republicans, where like liberal ideology was something good, and then in the 90s they turned to something bad. They also turned the word regulation into something bad, something that people hate. When regulations are why we have a 5-day work week, regulations are why you get sick days. Regulations are why there's stoplights and lines in the road. So like you guys, if you guys have ever traveled, if you've ever been to a developing nation that doesn't have these regulations, it's a fucking nightmare. People are driving all over the road. There's no order at all. There's schools collapse during earthquakes because the regulations don't dictate the houses are built a certain way. You got structures with power lines next to water lines. I remember I was in Jordan and I was watching these guys welding a fence, and they had, the welders there, and they had the equipment that no protection at all. They were just sparking it, and it was just flying everywhere. Those guys are going to be blind within a year and a half. But, no regulation on that. There's no protections for the workers, and they're forced to do this. That's the work. You're looking at living in Somalia. That's what you're looking at if you follow like what the Republicans want. Ask them that every single time. I thought that was fantastic. What do you think, John?
I couldn't agree more. I really have nothing to add. Like it's upsetting that, because after he asked that, he asked it again, and then the moderators said, "We don't have enough time." It's like, I wish they would have let him answer the fucking question. They saved his ass there, because he wouldn't have been able to say what fucking regulation, and because there isn't one. It's just a bugaboo. Like I don't even know if they would actually do it. It used to be that they specifically wanted to cut back on regulations in order to, increase profits. But I don't even think that's really the case with Republicans anymore. I think they're just like, oh yeah, we'll lower regulations. That's how we're going to solve this problem. That's it. Because we don't have an actual solution. We have Donald Trump. like that. That's it. And so, yeah, he wouldn't have answered it anyway. So whatever. But I don't think it's too smart for Americans, like the average voter, to get. I think that if you kept hammering this, Democrats could turn it into a winning issue, because it makes a lot of fucking sense, especially the way he explained it with the fire thing.
Yeah, the regulation thing, I think you're right, John, that originally this is just, from the capitalist class. They're saying they don't want to put in worker protections. They don't want to offer anything that makes life better for, the common folk. And that's going to save them a lot of money. I want to dump my waste into the water supply because it's cheaper for me. And that's just but they've done such a good job hypnotizing everybody else that follow them that it's gotten to the point where it's like, oh, I don't want to follow these regulations because these regulations were set by the elites, like all these nerds in white lab coats telling me that I can't do this and that, imagine if we still had leaded gasoline and we tried to get rid of it today, the Republicans would not allow it. They absolutely would not allow it. They're like, oh, they're trying to cripple our energy industry and stuff like that. And I don't know. I just don't know what to do with that, because like, if you guys are fine with, and they always say that the free market's going to correct it. It won't. It won't. If it did, bread wouldn't have been 50% sawdust during the 1800s. Like, because why not? If you're going to make all that money off of it. But yeah, I am upset that they did save his ass on that, because, another thing you point out, last thing, is I thought it was great that he said, well, you're blaming this on like the president and the vice president and everything. What federal housing regulations are you talking about? Like, as far as I know, this is generally done by states and, the zoning by certain regions, like the federal government. And if the federal government did create this, it would come through Congress, not the president. He had his ass against the wall, and I will never forgive them for moving on for that, because it was a perfect question. Any last thoughts on the debate with this, Rio?
I just want to say that really, like, kind of adding to what you were saying about regulation, it is a good thing. And when the rich are regulated, when corporations are regulated, when transactions, when the economy is regulated, what that really represents is poor people getting power, is workers getting more power, and the owners getting less power. That in the end, it really is that simple. The owners realize that they're losing a little bit of power to abuse people and to exploit people. So they are very much against regulation. But also, we have to remember, Republicans want big government. That's the truth. All of their shit about small government and no regulation, that only is for giant corporations and rich people. That's the only group that they don't want to regulate. They want to regulate sexuality. They want to regulate the poor in general. They want to regulate non-Christians or non-Christianity. They want to regulate, like, literally everything. Every social behavior, they are completely up your ass. I'm sorry. So they are, in my opinion, they say that they don't want regulation to cover the fact that they absolutely do want regulation, and they're big government people. That's what I think. Like, a lot of them want a national abortion ban. I mean, what larger regulation is there than that? So that's all.
They love it. They love it. All right. Oh man, let's move. How about you want to do Iran next? And we do finish off with
let's
Coach?
do it.
Yeah, let's do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I don't want to finish with that. So
you don't want to finish with with Iran. Yeah, that's right. There was a socialist who brought up the fact that businesses want to get richer at the expense of the poor. It was on Fox News. They then cut away because it was too good of a point.
Yeah.
Gotta respect the hustle on Fox News. They try their best. It's a losing argument, but they put forth their best effort every day. All right, so I'm sure, as many of you saw yesterday, Israeli forces and Iran-backed Hezbollah fighters have engaged in fighting on the ground in southern Lebanon after Iran launched its largest ever attack on Israel Tuesday. The Israeli military said 8 soldiers were killed in combat. I hadn't heard that until I looked this up before the show, because last I saw yesterday nobody was killed. I was kind of surprised to see that there were casualties. Iran's attack on Israel in Lebanon. Israeli strikes have killed hundreds of people and displaced about 1 million residents. Didn't know that either. Iran fired about 200 ballistic missiles in Tuesday's barrage, which is said was in response to the killing of a Hezbollah chief and a Hamas political leader on Iranian nuclear sites. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Iran will pay as fears grow of a wider all-out war between the two regional military powerhouses. Iran's military chief warned of broader strikes if Israel responds. President Joe Biden said he does not support a potential Israeli attack on Iranian nuclear sites. People in Tehran are on edge ahead of possible retaliatory attacks in Iran. In Lebanon, Israeli airstrikes have killed hundreds of people and displaced about 1 million residents. For those any Republicans that are listening, Tehran is the capital of Iran. I'm sure you didn't know that. But John, John's taking a drink. Rio, what were your thoughts when you first saw this?
Well, I thought that nobody died except for one Palestinian from the bombardment, specifically from Iran, because, I mean, I'm no fan of Iran. I mean, we could talk forever about the craziness of Iran, but it does seem that they definitely try to bring the amount of casualties as low as possible when they bombard. Like, some people say they're just trying to save face or trying to do a response. I don't really know, but I didn't think anybody died except for one Palestinian in that bombardment. So 7 people died?
8. Yeah, I was surprised to see the number 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably one of those things where people didn't die immediately and then died.
Yeah.
I just think I think that when I look at Joe Biden talk about this, he said, I don't know when he said this, but he said they need to stop. He says somebody asked him about it, and he goes, "Well, they just need to stop. They need to stop. You know, it's getting too out of control." I think I would imagine that there is an effort to stop all of this and to stay out of a huge regional war. Yeah, I mean, there's even there's even people in the military industrial complex that have pushed back on Joe Biden green lighting a ground invasion of Lebanon. Even the military industrial complex pushed back against that. Like even the deep state pushed back against that shit. Like supposedly Joe Biden was giving them a green light for a ground invasion. So I mean, my point is that like people generally a lot of people don't want this to explode into a regional conflict. Israel obviously does, and it's just scary. It haunts me. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, we're sitting in a situation here where, honestly, and again, as you said, Iran ain't like the good guys. Like Iran is a very bad country in many, many ways. But thank God that they have responded to things in the way that they have. Thank God when Trump assassinated that general, I'm forgetting his name,
Qasem Soleimani,
they just decided to let bygones be bygones. Thank God, because like if they did something and it would have been easily escalated into all-out war. Here, thank God, this is all they've decided to do. And it is actually funny. It's like they're stunting on him. Like, oh yeah, guys, by the way, you can bomb military targets without killing any civilians. Like, and we're not even doing, and we're doing it against one of the most well-defensed pieces of earth on the planet, and we're still able to do that.
Yeah.
So I get what they're doing. I wish they hadn't done it, but I understand what I did. Because I just there's no reason for Bibi to not continue to escalate. Like there's no incentive for Netanyahu to not go into all-out war with Iran. That's the best possible outcome for him. Like that's it's only good. There's no downside because soon as the fighting stops, he's out of power. So he wants to keep the fighting going forever, and he wants Biden to lose. Which, as much as we hate Biden for his support of Israel, Bibi would rather have Trump in there, where Trump's just saying turn everything into a parking lot. Like that's the calculus we're playing with here, which is why I said earlier in the show, the approach that Biden is taking doesn't make any sense. It's almost like he thinks he's taking a principled approach against his own benefit, because at this point it's clearly hurting Kamala's chances. It was always hurting Kamala's chances, but it's very clear and obvious at this point. If this escalates into an all-out war, there's no way that helps anyone but Trump. But he's greenlighting boots on the ground, an invasion of Lebanon, an invasion of a sovereign nation. Like, it's insane just how this is going, and I just don't see it ending well for anyone.
Does anybody ever stand up to Netanyahu? Is there a person on the earth in any position that's able to do that? I mean, because Joe Biden, he just won't. He just won't. It freaks me out.
Yeah. I don't know. It's with Netanyahu. Yeah, you're right. It's like it's funny that you remember when Biden ran, that the two things that he really hung his hat on was his ability to negotiate in the Senate. Is that I can get the Republicans to work with me. The veil will lift or something like that, he said, and the Republicans will stop being obstructionists and they'll work with me because I got the silver bullet to deal with them. And also his foreign policy credentials, that I can solve all these foreign policy problems. And like the foreign policy thing is what Biden may be remembered for the most, with this collapse of everything that's gone on in Israel and how they've played him. Like you said, like John said, it's like there's any illusion that, how many times do we have to read articles that say Joe Biden is furious at Netanyahu behind the scenes? Yeah, it's like
Joe Biden furiously waves his fist and says, "Cut the malarkey." To
They're doing the same
Netanyahu.
thing with Kamala Harris, though. Have you guys noticed that? Like,
what?
they take any little thing and they're like, oh, well, behind the scenes, she's very on board of the ceasefire. They make up all these stories. Yeah. Yeah.
It's cut the malarkey and cut the check. Let's get them some more money and we'll be good to go. And with Netanyahu, I don't know if you guys saw this chilling speech. This was like right before the attack by the Iranians. Oh, and before I play this, I wanted to, before I forget, and John, you were talking about now Rio. I do think Iran is just doing it to save face. I do, because at least I thought that when no one died. The fact that it was 8 people, I was like, oh man, maybe they do mean business. Because I'm sure Iran doesn't want to go to war with Israel either. Like, why would they? It's if they did, they wouldn't bother with the proxies. They would just go to war themselves. But they don't want to go with the United States, and we don't want to go to war with Iran. That might be the only thing that kind of saves this from collapsing even more. Because the last thing the United States wants is to get
Joe Biden would do it.
Go to war with Iran? No, I don't think he would. I don't. And it's primarily because, so we did want to go with war with Iran back in the day, back when we started the war on terror. Iraq was like our pregame warm up or whatever. Everyone knew that the Iraq war, like Saddam was going to be a pushover. Rebuilding the nation, not so much, but actually defeating militarily wouldn't be an issue. Iran, though, totally different story. It's like 3 times as big. It's got a lot more money, and it would be like if Afghanistan had as much money as California. It's an impossible war to win. And we know this. We are very well aware of it, that it's well too defended of a position with way too much money. So we're like, no, we don't want that. The Israelis are the ones that are worried about, going to war, but not us. But let's see what Netanyahu had to say. This is, if I remember correctly, the day before the Iran strikes.
Is this addressed to the... Is this the address to the Lebanese people made in
This
English?
is his address to the Iranian people.
To the Iranian people. Okay.
Mm-hmm. He's gone Mr. Worldwide. He's addressing every nation one by one. And he's
In English.
In English, of course. Yeah.
The leaders of Iran. Yet at this pivotal moment, I want to address you, the people of Iran. I want to do so directly, without filters, without middlemen. Every day, you see a regime that subjugates you make fiery speeches about defending Lebanon, defending Gaza. Yet every day, that regime plunges our region deeper into darkness and deeper into war. Every day, their puppets are eliminated. Ask Mohammed Dev, ask Nasrallah. There is nowhere in the Middle East Israel cannot reach. There's nowhere we will not go to protect our people and protect our country. With every passing moment, the regime is bringing you, the noble Persian people, closer to the abyss. The vast majority of Iranians know their regime doesn't care a whit about them. If it did care, if it cared about you, it would stop wasting billions of dollars on futile wars across the Middle East. It would start improving your lives. Imagine if all the vast money the regime wasted on nuclear weapons and foreign wars were invested in your children's education and improving your health care, in building your nation's infrastructure, water, sewage, all the other things that you need. Imagine that. But you know one simple thing. Iran's tyrants don't care about your future, but you do. When Iran is finally free, and that moment will come a lot sooner than people think, everything will be different. Our 2 ancient peoples, the Jewish people and the Persian people, will finally be at peace. Our 2 countries, Israel and Iran, will be at peace. When that day comes, the terror network that the regime built in 5 continents will be bankrupt, dismantled. Iran will thrive as never before. Global investment, massive tourism, brilliant technological innovation based on the tremendous talents that exist inside Iran. Doesn't that sound better than endless poverty, repression, and war? From Qom to Isfahan, from Shiraz to Tibris, I speak.
All right. So, Ria, I want to go with you first because you had the same reaction I did when I saw this, when Netanyahu said, when Iran is finally free, and that day is coming quicker than most people think. I saw you kind of jump. Yeah. What was your reaction to seeing that?
Well, my question to him is, if I was there and I was a reporter, I would be like, explain exactly what a free Iran is. What does that mean? Does that mean that Israel gets to expand and have like some gigantic state? Like what? There's always a crazy angle because Netanyahu is a complete sociopath. He is like probably the most evil person that I can conceive of, Netanyahu, and or at least one of them. And he always has this horrific view or meaning behind his words. What is the free Iran? Like, I'm thinking immediately, like, obviously get the Ayatollah out of there, give women their rights. But for Netanyahu, what does a free Iran mean, though? Because I'm sure it's not all about human rights. So that's just, yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, it actually was stunningly similar to what Omni-Man
oh my God,
said to the people of Earth. Like, it's just like, no, you'll be so much better in the Viltrumite Empire. Imagine all of the technology we could give you, and like burning around him. Like that's whenever someone says something like that, it's like, okay, well, why don't you just fucking like let them come to Israel then, bro? Like,
so
if you're so worried about these people, let them come to Israel. What's
and
the
notice
problem
how he said, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, continue.
Notice how he said, oh, you're going to join the economy with the rest of the West. You know, you're going to join this economy and you're going to have the tourism that we have and you're going to have the connections that we have. It's just really creepy. The other thing is he says that the noble Persian people, all right. And he's like talking to the Persian people, trying to riz them up basically. but then he says, there's nowhere we can't reach.
Yeah.
So he's threatening civilians
to defend ourselves
while he's talking to civilians.
Yeah. They're taking you into the abyss. Like, oh my fucking God. It actually, the other thing that it reminded me of was exactly how Republicans talk about Ukraine. Of like you know, why are they spending all of this money fighting Russia when they could just, you know, give Russia the Donbass and, you know, be fine. You know, that like I don't understand why they're doing. Why are we wasting all of our money? You know, we could be spending this on all the things that we won't spend it on. Like that. That's exactly. It was almost written by the same fucking people.
Yeah, with his nice country you have there. It'd be a real shame if something happened to it. I got that kind of vibe with him going. And it is especially chilling when he gave essentially the same speech to the people of Lebanon just a week ago, right? Saying that, you know, our fight is not with you. Our fight is with your government. And if a few of you happen to die along the way, well, that's not our fault. And it's everyone who saw that said, "Oh, he's definitely planning something against Iran." Like we all know that's what's coming here. I've long been fascinated at the United States, well, specifically our countries, and our hatred and suspicion towards Iran. And that if you ask people why we have this negative relationship with the Iranian government, they always go back to 1979, the Iran hostage crisis. No one ever talks about the fact that the United States and Great Britain worked for decades to screw over the Iranian people and to steal their resources. No one ever talks about that. That's that they always assume that, well, it's kind of like how they view Palestinians. Well, those are the bad guys. They're bad. Like the history be damned. We don't got so any provocation on their part is just seen as evil people being evil. Like no one is asking right now, does Iran have the right to defend itself? No one. I haven't seen that question being asked anywhere, and it's not going to, because that's not part of the narrative that the Israel is our ally, so everything they do is all right. And once again, none of this requires you to back the Iranian government, to say that people have free and equal rights. I just like the United States of America does not give a shit about free and equal rights around the world. We don't. If we did, we wouldn't be best friends with Israel. We wouldn't be best friends with Saudi Arabia, like countries that we wouldn't run our country the way we do. Like we just put this mask and this facade on that the world has good guys and the world has bad guys. And I wanted to share this map that you two have probably seen already, but I thought it was pretty interesting. I don't know if you guys remember back when they would always have these polls on which country is the greatest threat to world peace. We would say Iran a lot. That was always the country that was put up there. And I don't know if any of you guys watching had ever noticed this, but I've always loved this map that Iran wants war. Look how they place themselves right between all these military bases of the United States. They're clearly provoking us. I mean, this hasn't been their ancestral land for like 5,000 years or anything, but the fact that they just dared to place it where they knew the United States of America would plant a bunch of military bases to make sure they don't act up seems kind of fishy to me. I don't know if we can trust them.
I'm sorry. Did Elon Musk share that?
Oh no, was that an Elon Musk thing?
It's speaking about Elon Musk.
Oh, I didn't read the article.
No.
American billionaire Elon Musk, who many know for his space reports, has recently increased spoke out against the presence of international topics. I don't know if it was Elon Musk or not.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't know.
What matters is that these freaking terrorists snuck their little country in between our military bases.
Our military bases. Who would have thunk? I know. It is some wild shit. I don't know. It is just really unsettling that Netanyahu feels completely emboldened. Like he has Biden right where he wants him, and he can do whatever he wants now. Biden has already said he won't do anything. There's no red lines in there. After the Lebanon thing, the fact that the United States said, okay, that's enough. It was all the evidence he needed. So I don't see. I don't know. Like there's no support from the people, and to be fair, it's not like Netanyahu has this upswell support from his people either. But what are we gonna do? I gotta know. Ria, what do you think?
He has a blank check. He has like weird absolute power, and he's totally exercising it. And that's all we can say. He this is when you have insane tribalism. This is when you have an ethno state, which is something that's not inherently based in human rights. And we in the West, we kind of pretend that we believe that all governments should be based in human rights. We pretend to believe that. But Israel is an ethno state that fundamentally, like you said, does not believe in human rights because they don't even believe that Palestinians have a right to defend themselves or that Iran has a right to defend themselves. And if you listen closely to Netanyahu, he does not believe in rights. He doesn't. And that's the horrific, scary thing. And he has a blank check and he keeps going and going and going. And like people just, I don't know. I don't know if someone's going to like eventually stand up and stop him. I don't know how this is going to play out.
Yeah.
It's tough. I wanted to share this other thing. Have you guys seen the CNN clip about about Tel Aviv?
Oh, I think I know what you're going to say about but Mossad.
Yeah. So
yeah.
It is a blood-boilingly infuriating clip about. I'll just play it here.
Oh, dude, yeah.
That among the targets were Israeli airfields, but also, and this is crucial, the headquarters of Mossad, the International Intelligence Service of Israel, which is inside Tel Aviv. It's in the northern part of Tel Aviv, but it's in the city. It's in a densely populated area. And of course, the concern is if you're firing, even though Iran might consider that a military target, it is in a densely populated city with civilian. That's just one more layer of escalation. The U.S. intel view.
It's like it makes me want to just body slam someone through the fucking wall.
Yeah,
like,
bro.
We have this sense, and I have it, and it sucks, but it's just a natural sense. It's like, oh, the media doesn't know what they're doing. Oh, because like when I talk to normal people about this topic, I assume that they don't understand. Like I assume that like there's a lot of information they haven't gotten over the years because of dense walls of US propaganda. And so like I give them this benefit of the doubt constantly whenever I'm talking about this with a normal person. But that's not the fucking media. The media knows exactly what they're doing. Yep. They will say one thing on one side and say the same exact thing is bad about the other. And I've been saying this entire fucking conflict from day goddamn one, ever since they started saying the human shields bullshit that, hey, their fucking headquarters is literally in the middle of Tel Aviv. Would that be like a legal military target in your opinion? They always go no. And it's like, why the fuck not? It doesn't make any sense. They just bombed by Beirut, a sovereign fucking nation, a city. And they're like, oh, that's where their headquarters is. Fucking human shields. It doesn't make sense. You must be able to say, yeah, no, Iran has the right to bomb Tel Aviv now. That has to be the logical, consistent conclusion. It's not, because this was never about basic human rights for you. It was always about Israel is right and everyone else is wrong. That's
only
it.
Israel has rights. That's the end belief. That's the belief of Zionism, is that only Zionists or the state of Israel has rights, and no one has any other rights.
Yeah. Something I remember reading a long time ago about the human shields thing is infuriating. It's absolutely infuriating, because it's like, judging by the way that the IDF uses human shields, like a National Guardsman living home with his family is using them as a human shield. Like his very existence, it means that he's using human shields. It's always been a farce. Oh, we lost Rio. Oh no, it's always been a farce. Oh, there he is. And I'm glad that more and more people are pointing this out. And the clip we're going to show in a little bit is going to go into something that I'm glad is catching fire, because it's about time this was put on the national spotlight. But I remember reading a while ago that we say we believe in human rights, the developed world. We don't. We believe in citizen rights. That's what we really believe in. That if you're a citizen of this nation, then you are entitled to rights. If you haven't reached that status of citizenship, like we're in ancient Rome or something, you a Roman citizen, you got treated one way, everyone else you're treated another. And people like not exaggerate, they really think this. If you ask people, like the United States Constitution delegates how the state needs to treat you, and they're like, well, yeah, for citizens, like, no, it's for everybody. That's what it means. It's like, if you were in the United States and you're put on trial, you have the right to trial by jury. Like the United States government can't institute a cruel and unusual punishment if you're not an American citizen. I mean, like, that's what it's built for.
Well,
not supposed to. But see, honestly, that's actually
they're not supposed to. So you'll get a stern fist wagging if you do that.
No, you're exactly right, TJ. You're exactly right. It's, in the end, it really is only a discussion about human rights. Like,
yeah, it should be. The Eighth Amendment is maybe my least favorite amendment, because it's the vagueness of it. Like, what is a cruel and unusual punishment? That can be interpreted, because I guarantee you, when James Madison wrote the Eighth Amendment, what his idea of cruel and unusual was far exceeds mine. He wouldn't think, putting you in stocks and tarring, if it's like, oh, that seems reasonable. Of course, no.
Tar and feather was normal.
Slavery.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that the language needs to be a lot tighter than the cruel and unusual punishment part. But yeah, it's go ahead, John.
I never even I never thought about this. Obviously I knew this, but I never thought about the fact that those words were written in the Constitution while slaves existed.
Right.
Yeah. That is so crazy. I know the entire slavery thing is crazy, but the fact that they wrote those words and just did that,
dude, you know what? Can I say something kind of new? Like a new idea to me, because, I came out of fundamentalist Mormonism, and when I was there in that religious space, the Constitution was inspired by God.
Mm-hmm.
The American Constitution came right from Jesus. He actually came down and he wrote it himself. Like, it's basically sacred. You can't, there's a religion. It's the American Constitution is its own religion. But the new thought that's dawning on me is that maybe it was just cruel and unusual punishment for other aristocrats. Maybe the whole fucking thing is for an upper class. Like, maybe the American Constitution was always just about the rich and the owners, the owning class and the aristocrats. Is that am I going too far there?
No, you are not. Because so there's this mythology that we have about the founding of the nation, that first, it was an uprising of the common people who were being overtaxed by the British government. These peasant farmers were really concerned about the cost of tea taxes. Does that make sense to you? Does that really make sense that these illiterate fucking bumpkins gave a shit about how much tea cost in Boston? No, exactly. It was always a landowner's revolution, and the United States government was they were the big they were the kid who grew up away from dad. It's like, we don't need dad anymore. Why are we giving all this money to this tiny island across the ocean? We can run our own shit and keep the money ourselves. And that's exactly what they did. They needed.
But they're genocidal too. On top of all that, they're genocidal aristocrats.
Yeah. Genocide, yeah. And and the British British government was moving away towards from slavery because they didn't need it in Great Britain, and the aristocrats in the southern United States were like, actually, we kind of like it. And the fact that you guys are talking about abolishing this is kind of scary towards us. But you're 100% correct when it comes to crafting the Constitution to keep power in the upper class. They don't even try to hide it, which is really funny. John, we talk about this, how we're really upset at the overuse of the, what's the phrase they use? The tyranny of the majority. They love saying that. And if you look at who wrote that, it was James Madison who said, well, when he was crafting the Senate, is that we need a body that's selected to protect the minority of the opulent. I always say for Republicans, that means rich, a minority of the opulent against the tyranny of the majority. He knew that if they had an actual democracy, the first thing the people would do was strip power away from the people who are rich and powerful. And they put up checks and balances or blocks to make sure, like, this idea that the George Washington, James Madison, Thomas Jefferson wanted regular people to start participating in. Are you kidding me? That they wanted these bumpkins showing up and sitting in the halls of Congress? If you would have asked them about women voting, they would have laughed you out of the room.
Exactly.
Like it would take you 10 minutes to convince them you were serious. Like they really thought that. Go ahead.
Women. Black
people,
the Irish,
the Irish, the Irish.
I mean, the Native Americans, the whole everyone was excluded. It's like Christianity. It's kind of like waking up from Christianity.
Yeah,
the whole outside world is fucking evil, and they don't have rights.
Yeah,
they don't have the right to vote or participate in a representative process. And really, the Constitution upholds this capitalist upper class that owns basic survival resources. And now let me say this though. Let me say this because I am a fucking Boy Scout. I am an Eagle Scout. Okay. I do have love for the country. And I do believe that like there was this progressive hope when the framers, when these aristocrats were framing this new constitution, and that they did want to do a more earthy social experiment with voting. And it was kind of an expanded version of democracy that went a little bit farther than feudal capitalism in Great Britain. So I'm not saying that America never was fundamentally good at all. Like there is this dream, there is this American thing, even if a lot of it's propaganda. A lot of people believe this freedom thing about America, but the other side of that same coin is it is propaganda. And the Constitution really is for the rich.
Yeah, and
it's kind of a deeper thing to talk about.
No, it is, and the fact that that we trick ourselves into thinking it's something greater than it actually is very annoying to me because there, like you were saying, Rio, like there are for the 1780s, the Constitution was a fairly progressive document. Just in the fact that it was the first nation established without a state religion is massive. Like it's huge. That was a huge step forward. And, it did have voting rights for some folks, some of the population, probably greater than you would have seen anywhere like in Britain and everything like that. But people aren't content with that. They aren't content with the truth. They have to make it even greater than it actually was. That, like Thomas Jefferson, for example, was a slave owner and a child rapist, and that doesn't mean he didn't have good ideas. That doesn't mean everything he wrote was bad. But he was a misogynist and a rapist.
People genuinely struggle with that.
They do.
They do. And this isn't just like Democrats really fucking struggle. In fact, I think liberals struggle even more with the concept that a bad person can do good things and vice versa.
Oh, it's true.
Democrats don't understand this discussion that we're having right now. Generally, Democrats don't understand it at all.
Really?
What we're saying about the Constitution not being inspired, that it was made to basically kind of uphold class and keep people down. That's generally I don't hear it a lot in liberal spaces. That's all I'm saying.
They're afraid of being called filthy commies for saying the Constitution isn't anything, less than a God-written document. And I don't know, it is, I always say that if you want to pay respect to the Founding Fathers, do them the honor of remembering them as the human beings they were, not the gods that you create. Like it is much more noble and more honest to look at it through the framework of the truth than the framework of mythology. And one word that does not show up in the Constitution, for all the words that it does have, the one word you will not find is slavery. Not there. The word slave doesn't even appear in the Constitution. Like what it does, like when we're talking about the 3/5 compromise, it talks about individuals who are not free because they knew slavery was wrong. They were embarrassed by it. They didn't like people in Europe when they've heard about the Constitution of freedom. I can't remember. I think it was de Tocqueville who said that he found it ironic that the loudest cries for freedom came from the drivers of Negroes, is what he says. Like, what are you guys talking about? You guys know you love your slavery. And I don't know. Well, oh, geez, so 8:15. We got to get to our last topic here real quick. That was great, though, Rio. Thank you for bringing that up. That was fantastic.
Sorry, it was a tangent.
Look, we're no John. Tell him we
love our tangents. We love some tangents.
All right. So we kind of touched on this a little earlier, but I wanted to share this clip that Ta-Nehsi Coates was on CBS talking about a book he wrote. And I haven't read the book, but he talks about the relationship between Israel and Palestine and how we view it in the United States. And he got some pushback on it. And I thought he did it masterfully, the way he talked about this. I wish that we see a lot more of this in mainstream media, but here we go.
Place committing horrific acts on a daily basis. So I think the question is central and key. If Israel has a right to exist, and if your answer is no, then I guess the question becomes, why do the Palestinians have a right to exist? Why do 20 different Muslim countries have a right to exist?
My answer is that no country in this world establishes its ability to exist through rights. Countries establish their ability to exist through force, as America did. And so I think this question of right to Israel does exist. It's a fact. The question of its right is not a question that I would be faced with any other country.
But you write a book that delegitimizes the pillars of Israel. It seems like an effort to topple the whole building of it. So I come back to the question, and it's what I struggled with throughout this book. What is it that so particularly offends you about the existence of a Jewish state that is a Jewish safe place and not any of the other states out there?
There's nothing that offends me about a Jewish state. I am offended by the idea of states built on ethnocracy, no matter where they are.
Muslim included.
I would not want a state where any group of people lay down their citizenship rights based on ethnicity. The country of Israel is a state in which half the population exists on one tier of citizenship, and everybody else that's ruled by Israelis exists on another tier, including Palestinian Israeli citizens. The only people that exist on that first tier are Israeli Jews. Why do we support that? Why is that okay? I'm the child of Jim Crow. I'm the child of people that were born into a country where that was exactly the case, of American apartheid. I walk over there and I walk through the occupied territories and I walk down the street in Hebron. And a guy says to me, I can't walk down the street unless I profess my religion. I'm with another pastor. No. I want to. This is very, very important.
It is
extremely important.
Yeah, let me lay it down.
I'm working with the person that is guiding me is a Palestinian whose father, whose grandfather and grandmother was born in this town. And I have more freedom to walk than he does. He can't ride on certain roads. He can't get water in the same way that Israeli citizens who live less than a mile away from him can.
And why is that okay?
Why
is that? Why is there no agency in this book for the Palestinians? They exist in your narrative merely as victims of the Israelis, as though they were not offered peace at any juncture, as though they don't have a stake in this as well. What is their role in the lack of a Palestinian?
I have a very, 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 very moral compass about this. And again, perhaps it's because of my ancestry. Either apartheid is right or it's wrong. It's really, really simple. Either what I saw was right or it's wrong. I am, for instance, against the death penalty. What the person did to get the death penalty, it really doesn't matter to me. I don't care if they were selling a nickel bag of marijuana or if they were a serial killer. I am against the death penalty. I am against a state that discriminates against people on the basis of ethnicity. I'm against that. There is nothing the Palestinians could do that would make that okay for me.
All right, so Rio, I'll go to you first. What were your thoughts when you? I assume you've seen this before, but what were your thoughts when you first ran across this clip?
I've seen it before. He's 100% right. And really, states, governments, groups, regulations, rules in general for any tribe of people should not be based on ethnicity. They should not be based on some religious claim to some geographical area and some ethnic group, even if that ethnic group was persecuted in the past in a very tragic way. You should never form the basis of a government on ethnicity. Ethno-states are an affront to human rights. That's what he was saying. Ethno-states are an affront to human rights. And segregation is bad. And we came out of the 1900s, and now we're in the 2000s. The lessons from the 1900s were segregation is bad, separation, separate but equal is not true. Separate but equal is not true. Israel is over there still preaching separate but equal.
Yep.
And they're practicing.
Let's be clear.
No,
They're
not
not
yet.
preaching separate but equal.
That's true.
They haven't even gotten to separate but equal.
They're
They're
just
saying separate
yeah,
but fuck you.
Yeah.
That's their
separate
rule.
but fuck you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the core of Zionism is an anti-Palestinian position.
Yes.
Zionism says Israel has the right to exist, and what that really means is Palestinians have no rights. They don't have the right to exist. They don't even have the right to be an ethnic group, because Israel says Palestinian isn't a thing. The word was invented as a slur by Romans. They say all sorts of stupid shit that's not true, even though Greek maps 500 years before the Romans were mentioning Palestine in their maps. They've been a people for like 4,500 years. But Israel propaganda says, oh, they can't be an ethnic group, and they don't have any rights. They don't have the right to travel. They don't have the right to their own water. It's crazy. So yeah, he's saying the truth, that ethno-states are wrong because it's fundamentally against human rights. If you believe in human rights, then you must believe that every human has the same rights. If you don't believe that every human has the same rights, then you don't even believe in human rights at all. That's what I think. That's what I say.
TJ, say your line about citizens' rights.
About citizens' rights? Yeah, that human rights don't exist, citizens' rights do.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
That's what. Yeah. It's a perfect example. It's a perfect example of this.
And it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me how many people think they believe in human rights. They they genuinely think that they believe in human rights.
Yes.
And this goes through so many issues, and not just this one. But like immigration. Those people don't have these rights that I think are human rights in the country that they are. But I have a right to stop them from getting into my country to access those rights. It's not my fault they don't have rights. It's their government, because there's this concept that a place, a government, a country, a people is somehow more than the individual, is somehow it supersedes the individual rights. And you heard it in that back and forth there when I don't even know who the host was like, hey, what about the Palestinians? Don't they have agency in this? And it's like, no, that's what apartheid is. Like it doesn't matter. And I thought Coates answered that so brilliantly, because no, it doesn't matter what anyone did. It's wrong. It doesn't matter that there was peace offers, which there weren't, to the Palestinian government. You don't get to sacrifice human rights because of that. But we don't view it that way. We still have people in this fucking country that say, yeah, no, states got to be equal in the Senate, bro. We're totally cool with denying people individual equality because states got to be equal. That doesn't make any fucking sense. But if you view it through this prism, that's for some reason, what happens to you should be determined by what a group of people does around you. It does make sense, but then you don't believe in human rights. And more people believe in the former than they believe in human rights.
And let me say something else. Let me say something else that's really extreme and really wild, and people hate hearing this. But you also can't say that human rights come from a deity. You can't say it. If you believe that Jesus is the source of human rights, you don't believe in human rights. Because the idea of human rights is, if you're a fucking human, you have rights. They're not given to you. They don't come from somewhere. You don't have to be worthy of them, or you don't have to inherit them. So like a lot of world religion, this is where I start to be anti-religious a little bit. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but a lot of the fucking ideologies, including Abrahamic religions, is a direct dismissal of human rights. You can't say human rights come from somewhere else other than just humanity.
Yeah, I agree.
I want to address this comment. You've never had a group of people like the Islamists who want you wiped off the planet. Idiots. Why does that fucking matter? Why does that matter?
Yeah.
Because these totally separate people want me wiped off the planet. I should subjugate a completely random other person because they live near them? Why does that fucking matter? And the only case where I can ever buy that is in retaliation against a larger oppressive force. Like, if you need to like commit a shitload of violence against people who don't necessarily deserve it because you are being oppressed by a very, very much more powerful force than you, and it's the only way to achieve freedom, there's moral cases to be made there, and even then, it's a fucking
There's
argument.
an argument. Yeah.
There's an argument there.
But not when you're the bigger force. When you're a nuclear superpower, you don't get to fucking say that.
And if somebody hates you, you don't get to hold them in apartheid.
No, once again, apartheid is either wrong or it's not. Like, well, what do you think? And it's like, if you're Nat Turner and you've been a slave your entire life in Virginia, everyone, your father was a slave, your mother was a slave, everyone you know was a slave, and you know that, all right, white people have been keeping me a slave, and you do a slave rebellion and you kill a bunch of people, all right, okay, like, you want me to be mad at Nat Turner for this? Like, and pretend it's the same thing that if the slave owners, killed him? No, like, there is asymmetry there that you have to deal with. And this, like, specifically when it points to the Palestine, it's actually, this is a good example when I talk about this, that here's our crazy solution here. Like, John, you mentioned that the Palestinians weren't offered a deal. They always talk about this, that we offered the Palestinians peace. No, they offered them a chance to surrender. That's what they offered them. They say that, listen, we'll give you autonomy over your region, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. You can't have a militarized border at all, or water control. You can't have you can't have an army. You can't have an air force. Can't have a navy. You can't have planes flying. No one would ever accept. No one would ever accept this deal. And like, well, they offered them. Well, why didn't they take it? No one ever reads the details of this. And so our solution, everyone who says a two-state solution, folks, it will not happen. The two-state solution, it's not going to happen. Like, the Israelis have made it very clear they don't want it. I'm not convinced the Palestinians even want it, honestly. The only possible solution to this is a one-state secular democracy.
That is God, dude.
What?
You fucking terrorist.
I know.
How dare you advocate for a secular democracy?
Right. And it's like, and then when I tell this to people, they say, well, listen, that sounds great and all, but you got to realize there's a lot of animosity between these two groups, and them voting together is going to be difficult. Yeah, democracy is hard. And here's my question for you. If you think it's so insane that two groups with that much animosity with each other could possibly coexist, would you have given the freed slaves the right to vote in 1865?
Exactly.
Would you have done it? Because you would not. Like, based on what you said, if you were there in 1865, you're like, I don't know, the blacks are going to be kind of mad about the whole 400 years of slavery thing. It'd be kind of dangerous. Let them vote South Carolina. Guarantee you that right-wingers Republicans, if you put them back, they said, that's a bad idea. We wouldn't allow
right-wingers Republicans, normal fucking Democrats, TJ.
Normal, yes, actually, yeah. They don't have the balls of the 1865 Republicans. The Democrats of today don't have it. And it's just like it's wild how just like the Palestinians' humanity is dismissed on a daily basis. My entire life, it's been this way. The fact that John and I talk about this, that in Israel, they have like the Jewish nation state law in Israel that states that, that the nation, like the Jewish people alone have the right to self-determination in the country of Israel. And John and I joked about this, is like, this would be like the founding fathers if they wrote, yeah, this needs to be a white majority Christian nation, like it has to be. They didn't even write that. The people who wrote slaves didn't even go that far in writing it into the document. And Israel has. And it has, shrinking support, but overwhelming support from the United States. And just like Ta-Nehsi Coates said, it's like, why are we defending this? If you notice, the host had a hard time actually defending the point when you put it right to them that this is, I forgot to share this. If you guys haven't seen this, in Israel, they have a segregated road system. So if you have a blue license plate, that means you are Israeli Jewish. And if you have a green license plate, that means you're an Israeli Palestinian. There are Palestinian citizens in Israel. It's like, 15% of the population, something like that. But they have a segregated road system. They can't even drive where they want to. There's integrated roads, segregated roads, but all throughout the West Bank and everywhere and around Jerusalem, there are roads in which Palestinians are not allowed to drive. So if you want to argue that Israel is not an apartheid state, please defend that for me. And if your response is like that idiot comment is like, well, you don't understand, the Islamists are bad. Fine, the Islamists are bad. that does not mean every Palestinian born into the state of Israel needs to be treated like a second, third, fourth class citizen. You're going to have to defend that position to me. I don't think you'll have much luck.
Dude, you know what you said about the one state? It's so true. It should be one state, and it should be based in the idea of secular human rights.
Yeah.
Unalienable. They're not from God. They're not from the Bible. They're not from this. And you know what? I think it's 7. I'm sure you guys have seen it. The clip where 7 of the biggest Islamic countries get together, and they say, "Hey, look, we don't want to even deport them. No violence to them. The Israelis can stay. They can stay." I can't remember what the specific. I don't know if they were arguing for a one state, but they were just making the point that we don't want to go through and wipe out and kill all the Israelis, and we're willing to promise that we won't. If there is,
it's actually not that hard of a solution. The
Yeah.
UN owns the fucking territory.
Yep, exactly.
It has a basic Bill of Rights and then cedes democratic control to the people of the region. That's it. They cannot, whatever they vote, they cannot take away these human rights from any of the people, whoever is in control, and we'll be good. You know, there might be fighting. There might be some violence. Don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be what we see right now. You won't see entire fucking strips level to the ground. I guarantee you that.
And also, like you said, John, the UN could establish a protectorate around the region and say, hey, we're going to be keeping an eye on this. And folks, I guarantee you, if the Muslim population starts acting up, there'll be Johnny on the spot making sure that shit is taken care of. Like, absolutely, they're going to clean that up. So yeah, no one is living in a fantasy world where that turning this region into a secular democracy is going to make it some sort of utopia, some sort of peace on earth. Everyone gets along happy. That no country's like that. That doesn't exist.
But it will heal it. Long term,
it can't possibly be worse than what's going on now, because this is an unsustainable colonial operation that will continue in perpetuity until that problem is solved in a one-state secular democracy. It's the only way out.
And that goes all the way back to the original question that was proposed to Coates of the Jewish state. It would destroy the Jewish state. When people ask, does Israel have a right to exist? They aren't asking, does Israel have a right to exist? They're asking, does a Jewish state have a right to exist? Because if you just kept it Israel and everyone had equal rights and it was still named Israel, it would still be fucking Israel. But them, it wouldn't be, because it's not a Jewish. They wouldn't accept that.
Yeah.
They also acknowledge that they would lose the majority of political power, and they would be the minority.
Oh no.
Person to person. And they say, well, we can't allow them to have a political majority because they don't believe in democracy. And they're not capable of enacting democracy or abiding by democracy. That's their whole argument.
Rio, this is the same exact fucking arguments Republicans are using against immigrants right now. It's the same exact
same argument.
When Trump was like, well, if we let all these immigrants into Pennsylvania, suddenly you won't have Pennsylvania anymore. And it's like, why? Why? It's going to be the same fucking place, just with different people. Everyone who's there now won't have their lives changed except for having more cultural options available to them. But it won't feel like Pennsylvania. It won't feel the same. The communal identity is more important to them than individual human rights.
Yes.
It is undeniable that is their argument. But the infuriating thing is that they won't fucking bite that bullet, because the idea of human rights needs to be upheld, even if it's not fucking true. It's so frustrating. I wish they would just say, yeah, we don't believe in democracy. We don't believe in human rights, because that would be honest.
Yes.
And at least the racists do that.
Exactly. Yes.
Say, oh, no. The problem is there's too many fucking different cultures mixing in.
Yes.
You need to separate them. That's logically coherent. What fucking moderates, what liberals, what Republicans, what conservatives do, it isn't that. It's this nonsensical bullshit that we believe in democracy, but only among these specific group of people we select.
Yeah. It is oddly refreshing whenever racists come right out and admit it. I appreciate it. Like, yes, I do think that there are too many differences between the arbitrary categories we describe as race to possibly get along. Okay. At least you're honest. At least I know where you're coming from here, instead of the ones that kind of dance around it and try to, and you know what really bothers me too with so Listen, I do understand the hesitation to criticize Israel, and for a lot of reasons, I get it. Like I understand that. What like Zionists and moderates and Republicans, liberals will say that, oh well, how, especially Republicans say this, is like, it's really insensitive that you're criticizing Israel, because don't you remember what happened to the Holocaust? Don't you remember that these people were oppressed and everything? And it's not right for you to criticize the actions of oppressed people. First off, not criticizing people. That's not what I'm doing. I'm criticizing the actions of a sovereign nation. It's not the same thing. Second, if we're going to play this game here that you don't want to criticize oppressed people, you sure as hell don't have a problem criticizing black people. That doesn't seem to cause you to lose a wink of sleep. Not at all. It's just only when it's someone else that you can kind of weaponize it. It's just, I hate the dishonesty. I just want them to come right out and say, yeah, certain folks can handle the responsibility of democracy and certain folks can't. That I like it when the racists do come right out and say it.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think we are almost. Oh, look at that! Once again, John, we landed the plane perfectly. 8:34.
I was worried about it too. That was.
I was.
I did want to have a conversation because you put it in there. Just what was the thing you said about religion? That you wanted. It was.
So when I reached out,
extremism here and abroad. I guess we kind of covered that.
We did
discussion.
Well,
yeah.
When I reached out to Rio, I asked him, any topics he wanted to cover, and he said something about religious deconstruction, and that's why I added that in there. But I think we did kind of go over some good religious stuff. Yeah, we kind of did that. All right. So
well, Rio, next time you're on, which I hope you do come back on again, we'll have a more in depth. We'll do some religion shit.
We love it. We love it.
Yeah, TJ. The only thing about TJ, man, is that he doesn't believe in ghosts. That's our one.
You believe in ghosts? Oh, really? Okay.
I'm an atheist, right? I'm totally pro science in every regard.
Well, not every regard. If you let's slow down here.
Not every, not every single regard. Yeah.
All right, we'll need to get you back on for ghost talk then. We'll definitely do that. I can't wait to hear that, but. All right, John, you do your thing.
All right, guys, you made it to the end of the video. If you are like Jimmy Carter, then you might be a ghost very soon. that was a weird segue, depending on what video you just ended on. We might not have even included Jimmy Carter or the ghost discussion in any of the videos that we released today. That's why you should watch us live on Wednesdays and Thursdays at 6:30 Eastern Time. If you loved our guest today and want to know where to see him, Rio, how should people be able to find you?
Nathan Rio on TikTok. It's just my personal account. Just share my thoughts about religious deconstruction, about deconstructing capitalism, and that type of stuff.
Hey, we appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot for joining us, guys. We appreciate you as always. Check out Rio's content where he will not attempt to sell you anything. You have our word and hit, and we'll catch you guys next time. Later.